I sign off these videos, you will have heard me say, if you're going to take photographic advice from anyone, make sure they take good photos. If you're going to take photographic advice from anybody, make sure they take good photos. Once again, if you're going to take photographic advice from anybody, make sure they take good pictures. A good photo is not necessarily one that you will like, and if it's not to your taste, that's okay. You don't have to like someone's work to see that they know how to use a camera. The intention of this video is to show you how the three previous cores, when combined in the field, will do a lot of the work in helping you get the shots you want. To demonstrate this, I'm going to use this photo to explain how those cores are applied in a real-world situation we're all familiar with. Being on holiday, seeing something you want to photograph, and, in the limited time you have, creating the image of it you see in your head. With this image, I got the camera to show you what I wanted you to see, how I wanted you to see it. And that's all any photographer aims to do. Let me break it down for you. As you watch this video, look out for these little pop-out slides which tell you which core the section of the video refers to. That way, you can go back and watch the relevant video. Obs. I'm staying in an apartment overlooking Mission Beach in San Diego. Obviously, I want to take a beach shot. So what do I decide to take a beach shot of? I said earlier, create the image you see in your head. But what do I mean by that? In the previous video, we talked about the difference between creating a shot and recording a shot. When anyone is on a beach in California, or anywhere else in the world for that matter, they see not only what is in front of them, but add to it all the associations they have with what they know about it. Or just as importantly, imagine about it. A California beach is a big slice of Americana. It evokes the 60s, the Beach Boys, hippie culture, and visually speaks to me of Kodak snaps, 50s fashion, as well as a 1960s aesthetic, bright sunshine, blue skies and happiness. Californian beach culture is indelibly etched into our consciousness, even if you've never been to California. And the Lifeguard Station is a constant symbol of that culture. So that's why I decided to include it in my photo, because without it, the photo could have been taken on any beach in the world. It is the visual representation of an idealized notion. Whoa! The difference between recording an image, like this, and creating an image which incorporates aspects of what the location suggests to you is the difference between a reference shot and an image you'd feel proud hanging on your wall. Anyone can take a photo. A photographer, whether hobbyist or professional, creates an image. Okay, so here's the stats about the photograph. I took it at ISO 100. I used a 12mm lens for reasons I'll explain in a minute, and used an aperture of f/22. The exposure was 35 seconds long and was achieved by using a 10-stop neutral density filter, more of which I'll explain later. I also had a circular polarising filter on the lens, but that caused me a few problems, and again I'll address those when we talk about the editing of the image. Now, how do you choose the right station out of the 20 or so on the beach to shoot? Well, it's really simple. You're on holiday, so you spend a lot of time walking along the beaches, and I looked at all the different stations that were there. The reason I picked number 13 was twofold. One, because it's number 13, and who doesn't like that in their images? The second reason is because it's the only lifeguard station I came across which has this elongated walkway up to it, which gave it this extra sense of length. I found that more interesting than the somewhat stunted architecture of the other lifeguard station. When you're standing on a beach looking out to sea, it's all horizontal lines. You've got the shore where the sea laps in. If you look out to the horizon, it's a horizontal line, and you've generally got sort of rows and rows of clouds up there as well. For that reason, I chose to make this a landscape shot rather than a portrait one, although I did entertain the notion of a landscape shot because of the palm trees that are in the background, as you can see here. However, when I framed it this way, as you can see from the image, there was no beach, so go no point. So why a wide-angle lens and not a tight crop lens? Because I wanted to emphasise the horizontal lines that are in the landscape. So you use a wide-angle lens and you get more of them in. This also emphasises the length of the gangway, which was one of the reasons I chose to shoot number 13. So the wide angle lens is there to accentuate the length that's already going to be present in the shot. If you try shooting it with a tighter focal length, whilst you do get those lines in, they're not emphasised. And the idea was a long line to carry your eye across the image to make it look like a vast open space, which of course it is. I also decided to shoot with an ND filter. The reason behind this was that if there had been clouds in the sky, an ND filter would allow me a long exposure. And a long exposure, when you've got clouds or water moving in a scene, gives you this lovely blurred, softened look, which you can see on these other photos I've taken. But unfortunately, on the day I took the shots in San Diego, there were no clouds in the sky, which I actually quite liked because it gives it this feeling of vastness and emptiness. But the water in my final composition didn't take up as much of the frame as I thought it might. In terms of percentage, it's roughly about 10% of the frame. So although the effect is there, it's not as notable as it would be, say, in a different shot like this one. I did put a polarising filter on it, but I wasn't happy with the effect that had on the shot. I didn't realise this until I came to do the edit, where what it did was it sort of left a darker blue area on the top right of the frame. When I took this shot, I knew I was going to crop the image to a different format. What do I mean by that? When you take the picture, it looks like this. It has a 3:2 format, which uses the full range of the sensor. But when I saw the Lifeguard hut with the elongated gangway, and of course you have the horizontal lines of the horizon and the shore, what I wanted to do was emphasize that in the crop of the photograph. So I decided that I would make it look like a Hollywood film. And I would use a very narrow crop on it, close to a CinemaScope 235-1. And what that does is it emphasizes the lines that already exist within the photograph. You accentuate it by choosing the crop of your photo. When I crop photographs, although you can crop to any size you like, I do like to stay in what's regarded as conventional sizes of cropping. They're the ones that if you use Lightroom or you use Photoshop will come in as your standards. I tend to favour 3:2 mostly. I will sometimes go to a 16.9 format. And one of my favourites is the 8:10, either landscape or portrait. It's especially good for when you're shooting live shows. I shoot live shows as well. And when you shoot a live show, sometimes when you've got 2 or 3 performers on a stage, the best composition you get comes through cropping the image down from the 3:2 you shoot at to an 8:10 format. You use the crop to suit the image. Originally, I thought I might edit this image in black and white, as I had done with some of the other images that I'd shot with an ND filter. But because the association in my mind with San Diego and California beaches was of Hollywood, I went for that crop that I've just explained. And I also decided to go for a colour palette, which was more reminiscent of old Kodak shots. When you used to shoot and they used to pop out the camera, they used to come out slightly cyan and yellow. So I've leaned my colour editing more towards those Kodak style colours to evoke a memory of times past. I decided to get up very early on the morning of the shoot to capture sun up because the sun would be behind the Lifeguard Station and I'd get these beautiful long shadows along the beach, which I thought would be nice in the shot. However, fate often has other ideas for you. Another part of the reason of getting up early was that the beach wouldn't be too crowded. But I was thwarted by a homeless man who'd actually slept under the Lifeguard Station the night before and was, to his credit, up and exercising at 6:30 in the morning. I waited for him to leave. I didn't go and ask him to leave. I waited until he'd finished what he was doing with his day for 2 reasons. A, it's just a privacy thing. He's entitled to be there as much as I am. So leave him alone. I waited because you never know how people are going to react. You could ask someone to leave a shot and you could suddenly have an argument in your head and then they'll just be bloody minded and decide to stay there while you're trying to get a shot and you're not going to get the shot. So I always like to wait and leave people come or go as they please. They have as much right to be there as you have, and just because you're taking a photo doesn't mean that they should move to please you. To give you an example of this, I was there for about 45 minutes to an hour taking this shot, I suppose, trying different angles, looking at different things, as you can see here. And while I was shooting, a guy came along the beach with a metal detector. Once he saw me, of course, he decided that the best place to be with his metal detector was walking all around the Lifeguard Station, clearly wanting to get into the edge of one of my shots. People do that. Not much you can do about it. You can either incorporate them or you can wait. I waited. Now, when I was about halfway through the shoot, I spotted a styrofoam cup up on the top of the Lifeguard Station, but I didn't clear it. It was there when I took the shot, and I thought, it looks quite nice, and I'll leave it there. Had it been a bin bag full of rubbish, I might well have moved it. When I originally envisaged the shot, I saw it as looking sideways, and I wanted to get the pier that's way away in the distance underneath the legs of the main body of the building. And I imagined that the station would be on the left-hand side of the frame, and you'd see this beautiful stretch of water and sand, and the fact that the pier was under the legs would take your eye deep into the frame, stretching out, seeing the rest of the pier in the distance. So you'd get, again, all these horizontal lines working beautifully for you. Unfortunately, when I actually put the camera down and took that shot, a couple of things happened. A, there were too many shadows in the shot for it to be practical. I didn't like the way it kept breaking up the image. So you had shadow, sun, shadow, and it was too busy. I wanted a clean, clear shot full of horizontal lines. I also didn't like the buildings in the background on the left-hand side. I know what you're thinking, I could have twisted the camera, but then number 13 would have been right to the left-hand side of the frame. I didn't want that either. So I decided to change my angle and move slightly more to the back of number 13. So when I moved back, slightly behind it, the sunlight, of course, is hitting the back of the Lifeguard Station beautifully. And it contrasts the shadow that's on the side of it, something I emphasised in the edit, which I'll talk about next week. I could actually have walked further back as well, and then just changed the angle slightly, but then I would have introduced more unwanted elements into the shot, like the shadows. This is what we call blocking out a shot. We used to work out the angles. That's what I want. It doesn't work. So I'm going to move and put the elements I do want to keep in here. And as I say, what you do is you work around the elements that you know you want in the shot. Once I started moving around and realised that I couldn't get the shot I originally wanted, getting the proportion of the hut to the beach became the priority. So in many senses, I actually moved closer to it to make the back end of it, with the sunlight hitting it, a bigger element in the image. And that is what really informed the final position of the camera. So there you have it, a deep dive into the thinking, planning and practicalities involved in taking a single shot, showing how applying the 4 cores helps you get the image. These cores are only the first 4 blocks of your photographic knowledge, but they contain the key elements to approach any kind of photography. Understanding your camera, ISO, aperture and shutter speed, finding and taking the shot, and combining your knowledge in the field. In future videos, I'll be covering lots of different techniques, shooting styles, and the many different ways you can use your camera. If there's anything in particular you'd like to see me cover, please leave a comment below. In the meantime, if you found this content interesting, please help me by clicking the thumbs up icon below. Subscribe to this channel to see future videos, and ring the bell to receive a notification when they're available. Next time, we'll be looking at the relatively simple steps I took to edit these photographs. See you next time. Now, as I said earlier, I didn't say that earlier. I decided that I would get up early. So there you have it, a deep diction